morning, everybody, and buongiorno a tutti, bonjour à tous. I tried to share my screen. Okay, I hope it's good. And so I'm really pleased to be here today, and I want to thank the organization for inviting me at this meeting, especially for giving me the opportunity to bring the point of view of the restorer, who is a figure that most of the time it clashes with the practical aspect of sustainability in conservation and restoration sites. And I also want to say that my speech today aims to stimulate a reflection on the general direction that could be taken to concretely implement a green transition on restoration and conservation sites. In fact, when we talk about, I'm sorry, I don't. Okay, it's better. In fact, when we talk about sustainability and green transition in operational context, we often focus on the study and development of green products and materials, which is an absolute necessity. But I think it is equally important to take into account all the global procedures and methodologies used in restoration works. As you can see in the slide, in a restoration site, we often have to consider several aspects like the necessity of temporary structures, the transport of material to make intervention, and also the material for constructing the temporary structure, for example. And sometimes we need also equipment, like, for example, we need electricity or water, and also we have to manage a lot of waste. So, and many other things, but we don't have time to analyze everything, but I think we all know or can imagine how many aspects came into play when we perform a practical restoration. So it was just to point out that materials are just one of the many aspects to consider for a concrete green transition. So in my speech, I wanted to focus on these two aspects. So green materials, of which I will show the latest line of research and testing that we are conducting in ICRCentral, and processes and methods, which in my opinion are the other key aspect on which there is still much work to be done to achieve a concrete ecological transition. Indeed, when we can see how the theoretical principle of conservation, such as minimal intervention and preventing conservation, are already in line with the needs of the green transition. But I think we need guidelines that put them in correlation and allow an efficient and tangible applicability on restoration sites. As regards the materials, we have available for years now green materials derived from natural substances. Some of them who have now entered the usual working practice as agar-agar gel, which is a polysaccharide obtained from algae used as a gelling agent, which allow an extractive compress effect during cleaning operation and also reduce waste production. Or funori, which is also a polysaccharide obtained from algae used as a mild adhesive and consolidating agent for organic material, such as paper or paint layer. And we have also other materials still in the phase of study, but derived from ancient practical technique. In this case, for example, for Mexican culture, as nopal, which is a mucilage extracted from the cladodies of Opuntia ficus indica, composed of mono and polysaccharide, mainly used as an additive in mortars. Another categories of green material on which attention has recently been focused are essential oils, on which also in CIR we are conducting various tests like this one carried out on a tombstone of the non-Catholic cemetery of Rome, on which the effectiveness of different essential oils like oregano, thyme, and cloves are compared with that of commonly used biocide. Another field of application of essential oils as biocide, which has been studied during a degree thesis in ICR, is their function as biocide additive in the consolidation phases of wet wood. In these images, you can see the results of the laboratory comparison of the effectiveness of different essential oil against the fungal mycelia, from which the product was then chosen for application on a stamp coming from the archaeological excavation of Metro C in Rome, which you can see on the right. Another product recently studied and with excellent potentiality is menthol, which is a chiral alcohol, the main component of the essential oil extracting for peppermint. And its characteristic as volatile binding media allow it to be used as an adhesive, sealant, consolidant, and temporary protective in various phases of intervention, avoiding the subsequent solvent removal, which instead occurs spontaneously by sublimation. In this case of a degraded stasis in CIR, it has been tested in the restoration of wall painting as temporary facing to avoid the falling of the thatched part on the left, and as temporary seals for mortar infiltration on the right. Moreover, it has also been tested as a temporary protective on the paint layer during cleaning with chelating compress to remove limestone incrustation on the wall painting. Another broad category of material that have recently been very much studied in that one is that one of nanomolecules, which have already a green side due to the fact that being much more reactive molecules are sufficient much lower concentration of product than traditional one to obtain the same effect. In recent years, in CIR, with the collaboration of the University of Parma, have been carried out tests and research for the use of nanocellulose for the consolidation of cellulose-based material, as in this case, canvas, and also in this other case, wood sculptures, which have shown excellent results. Yet another potentially very interesting category of green material are bacteria and enzymes, which have been studied since 1980. In this case, for example, you can see a study for testing sulfate-reducing bacteria for the bioremoval of a gypsum-based black rust from marble, which gave excellent results. And also in this case, I'll show you a recent study always carried out in CIR during a degree thesis, in which we tested the application of a nutrient medium that stimulates the bacterial production of the resilient microbial community within the degraded zone. Therefore, it is an even more interesting mechanism because it does not bring the application of new alien bacterial species, but goes to feed those already naturally present in that given circumstances. Finally, I want to mention another very useful tool which has existed for many years to support the creation of low toxicity solvent mixtures that have the same solubility parameters as more toxic substances that sometimes are unfortunately necessary in restoration intervention. This tool is free available for download from the CIR website. So I showed you an overview of the latest green products in vogue, but every time at the end I have a question. So are they really green? And above all, how green are they? Because in the end, we do not know the real ecological impact of production or their carbon footprint, or rather their environmental footprint. So I think the first thing to do to be able to talk with a real clinician is to carry out the life cycle assessment of all these materials. And even more, the ideal would be to calculate the life cycle assessment of each operation concerning a restoration project that take into account the ecological footprint of both the materials, even those who are not green, and the operational process adopted. For example, to draw up a restoration project, we usually refer to a price list, of which you can see here a screenshot as example, which describe the different operations in detail and quantify them relative to a given cost per unit of measurement. So it would therefore be desirable to calculate an environmental footprint for each of these items in order to be able to quantify an overall ecological index of the project that would also allow to orient these choices towards the intervention with less environmental impact. How now, this is not easy at all because there are a lot of parameters to consider, but I think it would be very useful to be able to at least approach this concept and reflect on it. Another fundamental point is, in my opinion, the standardization of process and methods, because as I said at the beginning, we already have aware of all the fundamental aspects for an effective reduction of the environmental impact of the intervention. And also separately, we already put them into practice. What is missing, however, is a correlation between them. A correlation guided and structured in order to make the overall green project. So how can we do it? I think we have to start from law and international standards, because it is only through the mandatory application of the parameters that you can really change the impact on a large scale, I think. And here I reported just only an example. For example, the Italian law already provides for minimum environmental criteria, called CAM, but unfortunately only for certain categories of interventions, such as those of construction. But surely the goal will be to cover all the different categories. And I think this could be a useful starting point to frame a more detailed drafting of guidelines and standard of process. Finally, I think that it's very important to finance the research project for new green materials, and also with an attention to a recovery of traditional knowledge, but that are more green suddenly, so often. But is equally important to focus forces for the creation of guidelines that can help conservator and administration to quantify the real environmental impact of intervention, so that they can make conscious and weighted choices according to the real conservative need of the work of art in the respect of the environmental that surround them. So I have finished. Thank you for your attention, and sorry for my pronunciation and so forth.